So last night I watched the first 2 episodes of Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and being completely honest, I thought this show was going to be so bad. It looked so cringe, garbage, it looked boring, it looked lifeless and empty, it looked like Spider-Man was live streaming. I thought it was going to be terrible, but I have to say I was very, very wrong, and I shouldn't have judged it before even watching it. I'll be honest, I liked it so much that it compelled me to come and make this video just so I can express how much I liked this show. Now, this is a very different interpretation of Spider-Man. There are a lot of changes, but the reason I think it's so good is because despite these changes, it maintains the heart of Spider-Man, and I'll talk about them changes more in depth later on in this video. But I do think when it comes to comic accuracy, what's most important is that the core traits of the character and the core essence of the story is there. But if you ask me, the surrounding circumstances, they're less relevant. They can change, and case in point, the latest Ultimate Spider-Man story is great, and it's so different to anything we've ever had before. Spider-Man gets his powers when he's a dad, a husband. Uncle Ben's still alive. Uncle Ben works with J. Jonah Jameson, and there's just so many differences, and people still appreciate that as a great Spider-Man story, and that's because it keeps the heart of Spider-Man. And I think this show also does the same, despite changing a lot. In one of the first scenes of this show, he's in a car with Aunt May, and you just get a silent, somber moment of Peter just expressing how grateful he is towards Aunt May, which I really appreciate that scene, because Aunt May is not related to Peter Parker. She doesn't have to be his legal guardian, but she chooses to be. And Peter Parker mentions Uncle Ben, and just this one scene, I thought it did a much better job than anything the MCU ever gave us. Just this one scene. And there are so many extra touches that this show did, which it didn't need to do. My favourite scene so far is, it's a very simple, basic scene, but you know, in most shows they've got Spider-Man arresting criminals in a montage. And in this show, there's this girl who steals from a pizza place, steals money. Spider-Man brings her back to the shop, and it turns out that she's fallen on a hard time, and she was just desperate, and she was regretful, she's sorry about what she did. And Spider-Man's just like, yo, low-key, I mean, it's completely up to you, but you could think about letting her go because she's just a victim of her circumstances. And just that one scene, it shows how empathetic this version of Spider-Man is, and how, you know, he's nuanced. He's got a nuanced outlook on the world. It's not just, oh, you're a bad guy, I'm gonna send you to prisoners. No, you're going through a hard time, and you need a helping hand, you need a bit of empathy, and just they didn't need to do that. They could have just had a normal montage of him arresting criminals, but just that bit makes it so much better for me. Another great example of this is, there's a scene where Spider-Man's fighting the fire dude in a pet shop, and he's trying to save the lives of pets, which are probably worth like two pounds, but he's going out of his way to save him. He goes out of his way to save fish. He doesn't, like, that scene, again, it didn't need to be there, but it just reminds you how pure Peter Parker is as a character. In this show, it changes up a lot from traditional Spider-Man stories, but it maintains that core of what Spider-Man is. You've got so many scenes of him struggling to balance his life as Peter and his life as Spider-Man. There's consequences for him being Spider-Man. He stands up Nico, his best friend, and she's a bit pissed at him. He gets in trouble at Oscorp. He's always late to school. They do a good job showing the conflict that Spider-Man causes and creates in Peter's life. Right, now it's time to talk about the changes. But firstly, it's important to note that this show was originally going to be a origin story for Tom Holland's Peter. It was going to be him before Civil War, but I'm pretty sure the showrunners were like, there's not much we can work with. You know, we can't have Daredevil show up, we can't have any villains show up, we can't have, well, villains that are going to show up or already have shown up. They're quite limited, so they changed it to be a MCU adjacent show, an adaptation of an adaptation, and you can definitely see that. There's a lot of references and scenes. It's like a parallel version of the MCU. Now, one of the first changes they make is how Peter gets bitten. He doesn't get bitten by a spider in a lab. He gets bitten by a spider from some sort of multi-dimensional universe that when Doctor Strange is fighting something that looks like a symbiote, Peter gets bitten by the spider, and I think a lot of people are going to dislike this change. I mean, I've not looked at any of the online discourse yet, but you ask me, this is a very good change. How boring would it be if this show started just like every other piece of Spider-Man media where Peter's in a lab and he gets bitten by, you know, a radioactive spider? This changes it up, and you know what? You have access to these other characters. Why not use them? Another massive change they've made is that Peter actually gets his powers after Uncle Ben's died, and this is such a big shift from traditional Spider-Man stories where, or at least in the original comics, where, you know, Peter starts off as quite a selfish, resentful, bitter person. He doesn't use his powers for good and indirectly causes the death of Uncle Ben, and then learns his lesson: with great power comes great responsibility. But they don't seem to have that here, because Peter gets his powers ages after Uncle Ben's died. So, you know, you don't really know if Peter went through that change without his powers, if he learned that lesson without his powers, or if Uncle Ben died of something completely unrelated. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm surprising myself. I've come to actually like this change, because let's be honest, you don't need someone you love to die to learn. Like, you don't want to be a knobhead, you want to be a good person, you don't need someone you love to die to learn that lesson. And the sort of implication here is, Peter's always just been a pure good guy. Even when he saves Nico without even having powers, he goes out of his way to save her. I think one of the reasons I'm so lenient on this change is the fact that this story is adapting the adaptation, the MCU adaptation, and it's building up on that. We get more references to Uncle Ben than we ever did. We get more emotional scenes relating to how Peter feels after the death of Uncle Ben. And this is more than anything we ever got in the MCU. And I guess, it just seems like he was raised by two decent people, and he already knows that with great power comes great responsibility. And he doesn't have to go through the storyline where he starts off as a bit of a knob and then realizes, I have to be a hero. And if you're someone who really doesn't like this change, but you also really like the Ultimate Spider-Man run, this is also a change that happened in that story, because there is no death of Uncle Ben. Uncle Ben said the words, with great power comes great responsibility, and we can also assume he told Peter that in this universe. So that's sort of my overall thoughts on that change. It doesn't subtract from the story, it's an Elseworlds, it's an alternate universe. The core of Peter Parker, the core of who he is and who he's been raised by is still there, and there's references to Uncle Ben, which is infinitely better than how the MCU treated Uncle Ben. And one of my absolute favourite changes in this show is the cast is so different to the traditional Spider-Man cast of, Harry, MJ, Gwen, even characters like Liz Allen and Betty Brant. None of them are here. I mean, Harry's here, but he's not really friends with Peter yet. Instead, Peter's best friends with Nico Minoru, who I'm not too familiar with as a character. I know her from Ultimate X-Men, but that's about it. I really hope they don't give her powers later on, because I sort of hate in superhero shows where everyone gets powers. It sort of takes me out of it. He's also friends with Lonnie Lincoln, who is one of my favourite characters, and spoiler alert, is Tombstone in the comics. They set him up to be quite an empathetic and really likeable character. You think at the start, this guy's a bit of a knob because he's trying to get with the girl like Pearl that Peter likes, but then Peter sits down and meets him, and I'm not gonna lie, I thought originally this guy was gonna be like a bully character, but he's actually just a really nice guy, and you sort of feel bad for him. After he walks home from school, he clearly looks discontent with something. He's clearly upset about something. And on his way home, he's discriminated against. The police are following him for doing nothing. A lady refuses to sit next to him on the train. And I'm really interested to see where they take this character. They're probably going to make him Tombstone, which is going to be tragic, but so far, always my favourite. And I really hope people don't complain about this change of Spider-Man's friends, because, I've read so many stories with Gwen, Flash, MJ, Harry, and the fact that this cast is just so fundamentally different, it really gives you an element of surprise. This isn't a predictable show. You don't know what's going to happen. And look, I didn't like Spider-Man's friend group in Homecoming and Far From Home, because it felt like, to me, these were quite undeveloped characters. But in this show, his friend group is infinitely more characterized than how they were in the MCU. So I think this show does what an adaptation is supposed to do. It changes enough so the story isn't predictable, but it maintains the heart and essence of the character. And that's all I wanted from this show, and I'm so happy they delivered on it. There's a few extra things I wanted to talk about. Firstly, I was so worried when I found out he's going to a small for Scar. Fuck. Oh my god, I'm gonna kill him. Oh, fuck! When I found out he's going to a school for smart people, because in the previous show where he went to a school for smart people, the dialogue was so cringe. All the characters were so cringe. They were like, yo boy, I'm gonna rewire the mainframe of the testicular torsion. And I'm like, bro, just speak like a normal person. And in this show, it seems most of the characters do speak like a normal person. They're smart, but they're not building Iron Man suits in their spare time. Also, a lot of people complain about the animation in the trailers and shit, but I'm not gonna lie, I think it's fine. It serviced the show as it needed to. I don't see the problem with it. I'll be honest though, I am not the biggest fan of the Spidey suit in this show, but what is what it is. It looks like something a reasonable 14-year-old would build to try and look like a cool superhero, so I forgive it. There are also a lot of race and gender swaps in this show. You've got Norman and Harry who are black, you've got Dr. Connors, who is a black woman. I'll be honest, the people really asked about this. Norman Osborn has been rocking waves as a white man since the 60s, which is an odd creative choice, but I don't really care about these changes. It's fine. So they're my overall thoughts. I've not made a YouTube video in actual years. I just was so impressed by this show. I wanted to come out here and speak about it. And if you're someone like me and you thought this was going to be dog shit, please just give it a chance. Just check it out. I hope you won't be disappointed. These first two episodes have impressed me infinitely more than Homecoming and Far From Home together. And I just prefer this as an adaptation. And I'm so excited to see what comes from it. They've already greenlit it for a third season, so they must be quite confident in it. So excited for that Daredevil episode, and I just hope it maintains the level of quality that I think it has right now. And before I end this video, I did just want to mention that the voice actor for Spider-Man got in a lot of trouble the other day because he said he's happy that the show wasn't annoying and woke. People are mad, bro. I saw some TikTok where someone was like, I'm gonna brick you. I'm like, bro, okay, he doesn't need to get bricked. I get it. It's a cringe thing to say. I mean, like, why say that? And if what we mean by woke is it contains progressive themes, then this show definitely is woke because it deals with issues like racism and rehabilitation of criminals. It does have progressive themes, so it's a bit of an odd choice of words. I'm not so sure this is a criminal enough act for people to be calling him racist or sexist. I think giving him the benefit of the doubt, maybe someone who's not the best of speech or says the wrong thing in a moment. I think what he just meant is, I'm happy this show wasn't just progressive with no good story. I'm happy there was a good story which served the progressivism. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm pretty sure we can all agree stories with progressive themes can be excellent, but only if they're well knitted into the narrative and they make sense within the story. Prime example is X-Men, which has always been an allegory for racism and sexism. I mean, look, I could be completely wrong. I don't know the guy. Maybe he is racist, but I don't believe that is enough for me to personally interpret that this guy is a fucked up person. Instead, what I interpreted is this guy probably needs to pick his words a bit better. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what the overall online discourse is going to be. I'm interested to see if people are going to hate it because of the changes, and if they do, are they going to be consistent? Are they going to hate Ultimate Spider-Man 2? I'm excited to see what people have to think.